Welcome to another episode of The Unseen Paranormal, where some of the scariest things are unseen. I'm your host, Eric Freeman. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Unseen Paranormal. Today we're chatting with Bill Bryan and Tanya Gilroy. They are the founders of Northeast Pennsylvania's Empty Casket Paranormal and the host of Empty Casket podcast. Bill is also an electrical engineer by trade and designs, builds, and sells many paranormal investigative tools. You can find those tools and more on their website, emptycasketparanormal.com. They're also part of the Get Haunted Network, which we will discuss and find out more about today. Hey, Tanya. Hey, Bill. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So, I always ask the origin question because I think everybody has an interesting story. So, Tanya, how did you get into the paranormal and starting Empty Casket Paranormal?
Well, I've been in it since birth. I've been fortunate enough to have a family that cultivated that by exposing me to ghosts and paranormal and alien conspiracies and stuff like that. And the house that I live in and I grew up in is haunted. So I grew up in a haunted house. And, it's always been a very passion of mine, learning about it. I'd never really gotten to the investigation part until Bill and I got together. And, he kind of re-sparked that passion in me that was long gone for a while. And we were talking and we're going over our theories and how we feel about, the paranormal world and everything like that. And we decided we want to get out there. We want to start investigating and find for ourselves these answers to all of our questions. And we started Empty Casket. And, we've been going strong ever since.
That's awesome to grow up in a family. I grew up in a family who kind of fostered my paranormal interest as well. And I was never taught out of it, which I think a lot of kids are.
Yeah.
And I've talked quite at length on the show here with some guests about that. But yeah, that's cool to grow up in a family where they weren't telling you, no, you're crazy or it's your imagination. That's nice to not be.
It's nothing to have not just me. Like if I was an outsider just listening into my family, I would hear them talk about what they've seen in the house, what they were feeling. My grandmother, she had me watching horror movies since I was one. She was big into the aliens. My grandfather used to tell me, he was, an old miner and everything. I live in a mining town. He'd tell me all the stories of our town and all the paranormal things that went on. So I was never told that it was fake or not real. It was always just a very natural thing.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. How'd you get into it, Bill?
Well, for me, I grew up in a house that was haunted. However, most of what happened around my brother and sister's rooms. And so I didn't really experience anything growing up, more so just hearing their stories. But when I was in college, that's when, the ghost hunter shows really started coming out. And it kind of sparked an interest in me and my friends. So we started a little group and got out to a few local places, got out to Centralia, Pennsylvania, and Gettysburg. And it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. But after a handful of investigations, most of them, they were done with it and ready to move on to something else. But I was kind of bit by the bug and I needed more. So over the coming years, I would get out whenever I could, which was difficult to do because I was always doing it by myself. It was really hard to get into group. I reached out to several over the years and either they weren't looking for somebody or they just never responded. And then when my brother got out of the Army, me and him started taking almost yearly visits to Gettysburg and doing ghost hunting there. And the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And then when Tanya and I started dating and I found out that, here's somebody who's just as interested in it as I am, we took a trip down to Gettysburg very early in our relationship. And, we spent most of the time down there ghost hunting. And afterwards, we're driving home and we're talking about it. And we need to do this more. And we decided to start Empty Casket Paranormal and kind of force our hand to keep it running and keep it going. And since then, with the exception of a few short periods of time, we've been investigating at least every other weekend for almost a year and a half now.
Yeah, that's awesome to share that between the two of y'all. My husband couldn't care less about the paranormal, so I'm kind of on my own with that. But yeah, that's pretty awesome that y'all, have that in common and can go out and do that together.
Yeah, I think that the fact that we both are into it has really kind of driven both of us to do it more. I was married prior to this, and my ex-wife, she believed in the paranormal and she would watch the ghost hunting shows with me. but she had zero interest in ever going ghost hunting herself, mostly out of fear. And when I would go, she would always give me a hard time about it because she was terrified I was going to bring something home with me. But that didn't really foster a good environment for me to be going out a lot.
And it's nice because we also include my kids.
Yeah.
I have a 19-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, and since we've been together, they get included in on it, and they love it too. And it's great. It's like family bonding.
Yeah, and going out and being active and not just, because it takes a lot to do an investigation. I mean, you got with equipment and you're walking around, and yeah, it's a pretty cool thing to do as a family. And also with you, Tanya, fostering that in your kids to where your kids are open about the paranormal.
Oh, I have stories. I have good stories to tell about my kids. They probably witnessed more than I ever had in that house. And I raised them as I was raised, to keep an open mind. Even when I had a period of, really bad depression and just really not myself. And I was not against it, but I really closed myself off at one point in my life. But even then, I never told them it was fake or there was no such thing. I always try to foster their ability to search for their own answers and to always keep an open mind. So, but they've had their own experiences, that's for sure.
I think in a lot of ways that translates to life in general, not just the paranormal. Because I just think me growing up as an open-minded individual, because my family, it told their own ghost stories, about living in a house that was haunted when they were growing up and stuff. And so I think it just keeps your mind open to the possibilities of the world instead of just saying, well, it's all fake. And then you kind of transfer that onto other things in life.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree on that. Yeah, they're able to come up with their own theories, their own thoughts. It's how I raised them, and to always, you come up with your own belief and what you feel is right.
Yeah, that's the same way that I was taught, and some people don't believe in that because I live in the Bible Belt. So, most of my friends were forced to go to church and take on their parents' religion, to where my parents let me make up my own mind and figure things out for myself. And I think I'm almost 40 now, and I think I turned out better because of it. Not saying anything about religion, that religion can't do that for some people, but for me, it's just not my path and not what I care to. But without getting into the whole religious muddy water, But so y'all started Empty Casket, and you also sell equipment. Like I said, Bill, you are a electrical engineer by trade. And so how'd you get into making the equipment? I know that's kind of what you do, is dealing with electronics and stuff, but to just jump in kind of feet first, making REM pods and that type stuff.
Well, it started out more so because, REM pods are expensive. And I thought, well, I have the skill set that I could probably make one of these. So I looked into it, found out how they're made and the circuitry that goes into them. I'm like, oh, yeah, I could definitely make this. So I could make them for myself way cheaper than what you can buy them for. And so my intention was to make them for us.
Yeah, our first REM pod was Tupperware.
Yeah. That Gettysburg trip that we went on, we had 2 REM pods that were
Tupperware and
Tupperware.
I think, was it fluorescent green tape?
Yeah.
It was great. It worked.
Right.
It worked. It wasn't pretty, but it worked.
So after that trip, I'm like, okay, they work. I need to put them in something better than Tupperware. And so I was looking for just a box that can make them look cool. And my thought was to go kind of steampunk with it. And then I found coffin-shaped boxes. I'm like, all right, well, Empty Casket, coffin-shaped REM pod, that just goes together. So I put them in that, and that was our REM pods. And then fast forward a few months, and we did a ghost hunt at Mid-Orange Correctional Facility in Warwick, New York. And that's where we met our good friend, Rob Sakowitz. And he saw my REM pods, and he's like, what the hell is that? No, it's one of my REM pods. It was your REM pods. I said, yeah, I made these. And he went and he checked them out, and he's like, all right, well, you're going to continue making them, and you're going to sell them, and you're going to make a lot of money doing it. It took probably about 2 or 3 weeks, but between Rob and Tanya, they convinced me to start making them. I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to make them, then I need to take them a little bit farther so I feel comfortable selling them. And so I updated the design a little bit, and then, over the next couple months, I developed our RIP pod, which is it's a REM pod, it's tombstone shaped, but it's small and pocket size. It's about the size of a pack of cigarettes. I started upgrading K2s to include sound and temperature meters, and I've been tinkering with other designs. I'm working right now on an obelisk, another upgrade to the K2, and a handful of other things that I don't quite have working yet, but I'm working on.
So as an electrical engineer, what do you think about the way that REM pods work? And do you, I mean, obviously you make them and use them, but what do you think about them being used as paranormal tools?
Well, when I first found out what a REM pod is, I was kind of blown away because they are quite literally half of an instrument. I don't know if you're familiar with the theremin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody who watched the old Star Trek, the theme was played on a theremin. It's an electronic device with two sides. One controls volume, one controls pitch, but you don't ever touch it. It's all based on proximity. Well, a REM pod is nothing more than the pitch side of a theremin. And I'm like, oh well, that's easy. I went and you could buy a soldering kit called the Junior Theremin. That is a REM pod. Like even the store-bought REM pods, they use the same kind of circuitry in it. It's not the exact same board, but it's the same circuit. And I'm like, well, that's super simple and way cheaper. So I, putting that together and found out it works. And then being that I work with electromagnetic energy every day and work with antennas and all that, I changed up the antenna design a little bit to make mine a little bit more sensitive, and was able to go through it and tweak both the K2 and the REM pod to better suit the paranormal as opposed to what they were actually designed for, which is not the paranormal.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome to have that background and understand how the equipment works. I mean, I have a basic understanding, just from using it and the whole theory of electromagnetic fields and the spirits being able to manipulate those. But yeah, it's pretty cool to have that background and be able to make your own equipment, even if it isn't Tupperware with, neon green tape.
And I will add that it's nice to have them because when we go into investigations, not that we're trying to debunk everything, but we do have a process of trying to eliminate the possibilities, your environmental possibilities. And when you have equipment going off, it does get exciting and you kind of get thrown into that moment. It's nice to have someone like Bill around who can be like, listen, this is great and all, but maybe this is what is setting it off, or do something with the equipment. The batteries are a big thing. People don't realize to change the batteries and the REM pods are going off.
It drives me nuts. Right. I watch all these ghost hunting shows and I'll see the same thing over and over and over again, where they get a series of really quick beeps and then it's on for a while before it finally shuts off. And they get all excited that something's really, really touching the REM pod. And it's like, nope, that's the sound it makes when the batteries are about to die. That's the sound that says, change your batteries.
Yeah. And I'm not just saying this because of what y'all said, but that's the first thing I go to with the REM pods. My first thought is, okay, did we put fresh batteries in it 10 minutes ago, or these are the same batteries that were in the last investigation?
And on top of that, equipment will fail and break and whatnot throughout an investigation. And I always bring a toolkit with me, so if I have to, I can fix it. I spent a few months, actually worked for Ghost Hunts USA for a little while, and I was their unofficial repairman for an investigation because things would break or they'd hear about modifications, but they didn't have the skill set to make those modifications, such as disabling the antenna in an SD7. And I'm like, all right, well, bring it here. And I'll sit there and fix it. I even fixed the equipment of a guest a couple times.
Yeah. You save people hundreds of dollars because a lot of those equipment, they run in the hundreds,
right,
if not more. And I'm sure people probably would just have thrown it away if you can't fix it.
Yeah.
So having him there, save them a lot.
Yeah, you've got some other cool stuff. I like the spirit boards that you got, and the Ouija board mirror is really cool too that you got up for sale.
Oh yeah, the Ouija board mirror that came from I got a new laser engraver and I was playing around to see if I could engrave glass. Turns out I can, and I had the Ouija board file handy, so I did that and threw it into a frame and painted the back of it black so that it has that black mirror look. And this is really cool. people are going to love this. I'm going to make a bunch of them.
Yeah, I may have to buy one of those for myself. So you've done quite a few investigations now. You had mentioned a few of them. You also have the podcast, which you talk about your investigations.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a few of the investigations that y'all have done.
Well, yeah, we've kind of been everywhere. We're in the Wyoming Valley in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's in the Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area. And yes, that's the same Scranton as from The Office. We have some friends that run a ghost tour group here in the valley, Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours. And they put on a great investigation. Short, it's typically 3 to 5 hours, but they are able to get access to a lot of local buildings that investigators otherwise wouldn't have access to. A great example of that, and one of my favorite places to investigate, is the Scranton Cultural Center in Scranton, PA. It's not only a theater, but it's a Masonic temple. It's one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever been in, and we've had the opportunity to investigate it a few times, and they even let us into the Masonic lodges and into their libraries and all that to investigate.
Wow.
And very haunted.
Yeah.
But we've done local libraries and schools, a couple residential homes, and then we started crossing places off of our bucket list. We did the Conjuring House, Pennhurst Asylum, Crescent Sanatorium. We've been all over. Mid-Orange Correctional Facility, up the Shanley Hotel, White Hill Mansion, which was phenomenal. And we're actually hosting an event there on February 19th with Get Haunted. Oh, Selma Mansion.
Selma Mansion, yes.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we also do like our local cemeteries and stuff like that. I love cemeteries. I'm a big cemetery nut. So we have investigated a lot of them.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, it's fun to do the big bucket list investigations, but I find that I like the smaller places that nobody really knows about or just, is known by the local paranormal teams. To me, those are just a lot more fun.
I would agree 100%. The bucket list items are great, don't get me wrong, and I have every intention on crossing them all off my list. But yeah, the smaller local places or smaller regional places tend to be more interesting. And better activity too. Like a lot of like Pennhurst Asylum, that's investigated all the time. We had not a single hit on the K2 or REM pod. The Conjuring House, very little on the K2 or REM pod. It seems like the more it's investigated, the less they play with electronics.
Yeah, there's so much foot traffic constantly going in and out. I don't know. To me, I had this conversation with Bill before. I love doing the big places. It was fun, but there was just, I think I even said it a few times right before we did Conjuring, and I saw all the dates for it, and I'm like, it just feels like that house must feel so tired.
Yeah.
It's in constant motion, constant investigation. I think when you do a place that's not so much investigator or not so well known, there's more energy. There's more, I guess, magic in the air. It's not exhausted.
Yeah, I think the spirits are more excited to have somebody to interact with as well, instead of just, you need to dance whenever we say dance, and they just get tired of that.
And that's something we don't like as investigators. We don't believe that, anything should have to perform for us or, entertain us. We're not there to be entertained. We're there to just try to communicate. And exactly like what you said, it's probably tiring to have to put on a show night after night.
Yeah. And also, I think with the bigger locations, you can be kind of biased because you've heard stories, you've seen them on TV. And also, if you go and do any kind of tour beforehand, you're kind of hearing all these stories, and it's kind of like the telephone game. And you might even get the tour from somebody who was hired by the place, who's never really experienced or investigated the place. They've just got the story secondhand. And then the more they tell them, the more they evolve. And so is it really what happened there? Or, I'd rather go to a place where it's not that well known, and if I'm being told any about the activity, the owner or the paranormal team that's kind of, their home team. I've been to some of those locations, and it just seems to be better. And because I like to go in and experience stuff for myself. We don't go in to investigate a haunting. We go in to investigate the stories of a haunting, because until you have experiences and get evidence, you don't know if a place is haunted or not.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, one of the things that we try to do, and it's not always possible, but we'll try to have it so that one of us knows the stories, the history, and all that, and the other one goes in blind, well, as blind as possible. Like typically, I'll be the one doing the research and getting the history and hearing the stories, And then if at all possible to keep Tanya ignorant of all that, we try to, and just to see, how our experiences differ knowing it versus going in there blind.
Yeah, I think that helps too, especially with if you're doing something like the Estes method and that person is the one listening, then they're not biased in any way to say anything that pertains to the location.
That's how I've always felt. I try to avoid knowing anything as little as possible, because I feel like my mind will be cluttered with knowledge. And am I really getting actual results, or am I kind of conjuring them up from what I've heard or from what other people have experienced? To me, that's not a real result.
Yeah, and also I think if you go in looking for something, you're going to find it. Especially if you go in, a lot of teams that don't necessarily, I guess, know any better, go in and they're told and they got it in their head, oh, there's a demon here, or there's an evil thing here. Well, if that's what you go in looking for, then that's what you're going to find. You're going to find evidence to support that theory that you've already made up in your mind.
Exactly. And it's funny because, that also causes haunts as well. People create it. So in a sense, it kind of comes alive on its own. Like a perfect example is like the Sally House. The actual story does not relate to the haunting of, what they say is there. And it's just kind of built up over decades, I guess, to where people experience the same thing. And is there really a spirit there, a little girl named Sally, or was this something that people built up and created all on their own?
Yeah, it's called an egregore. It's a thought spirit. It's tulpa if it's done on purpose, and egregore if it's done on accident. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think those kind of things pop up a lot. Or sometimes you get spirits that they're at a location and people are always going in there asking for somebody specific, and so they pretend to be that. There's no rule that spirits can't lie to you.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's very true at the Conjuring House. You get a lot of people going in there asking about Bathsheba, and I think most of the time when they get Bathsheba coming through, it's something else lying. Yeah. And there's a lot of misinformation with that house.
And they're going off of what they know, and they're just trying to conjure that up instead of actually looking for the real story.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of talking to Andrea Perrin and kind of getting the real story from her and kind of what's BS and what's not about the Conjuring House. And I love getting her aspect because she actually lived through all that, and that's where the Conjuring House comes from, is from her family. And so.
Well, yeah, your interview with her is one of the things that I listened to in preparing for us to go there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I spent 3 nights there in July, and I will never go back.
They've got it up for sale now for like $1.2 million.
Yeah, they're ready to get out of there, and I don't blame them one bit. I'm surprised as long as they did.
Yeah, I had asked Andrea Perrin about what she thought about them buying it to begin with, to have paranormal investigators come in there, and she said she was kind of on the fence about it because she still has, even though all that crazy stuff happened to her and her family in that house, it was still home to them for like 10 years.
Yeah, and
so she grew up a good chunk of her life there, and she still holds a place in her heart for that house.
Well, one of the nice things about Corey and Jen is they care for that house too.
Yeah,
I know they're looking for a buyer. They're being very picky about who they're willing to sell it to, because they don't want somebody to go in there and buy it and turn it into a freak show or to destroy it, or they want someone who's going to treat it with respect and the way that it needs to be treated.
Yeah, and it's not just, hey, we're selling this haunted house for $1 million. I mean, there's quite a chunk of land that goes with the house as well, and a barn and all kinds of other stuff. So
what's really interesting is if you talk to the neighbors and that, and they're willing to tell you their stories, it's not just that house, that piece of property that's haunted. It's the entire neighborhood.
Right.
Because that whole area was a huge battleground during the King Philip's War back in the mid to late 1600s.
Yeah, and when I talked to the crew from Sleepless Unrest that did the documentary there, the directors, Kendall and Vera Welton, were telling me that because it was in the middle of COVID when they shot it, they didn't find out until toward the end that the neighbors had stories too. And so they were thinking about going back and doing maybe a smaller documentary and getting kind of the whole story from the neighbors and all that stuff who would be willing to talk to them.
That'd be great. Yeah, Sleepless Unrest was a great documentary. We watched it well after we were there, and it helped to validate some of the things that we saw while we were there.
Like especially like outside, I saw like the flickering lights in the forest. For some reason, I was more drawn to the outskirts, to the land, more so than the house itself. And I got to see those lights, and then I was chalking it up to neighbors or maybe just my own imagination.
We didn't realize just how much woods there were. There's no way it was neighbors.
And then when we saw that documentary, I freaked out. I'm like, I saw those. That's exactly what I saw.
It's funny. We were there, and they have a big circle of stones, and so we were sitting there, and Tanya goes under the Estes method, and she ends up doing something that she has never done before or since. She got up and started walking away while blindfolded with the headphones on.
In the dark.
Just got up and started walking away.
Yeah. I was just really compelled to go. I kept on saying, I wish we can go beyond the wall. I wish we could just go walk around down there. I was just drawn to whatever is beyond there.
And no, this is like 15, 20 minutes after we had both seen something running through the yard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an insane place, and I hope they get somebody that'll respect the spirits that are there and the things that are there. The whole Bathsheba story is gotten blown out of proportion. There's no the story that it's involved into. There's no historical evidence to back that up.
Nope, none whatsoever. Like the first time she was ever accused of being a witch was by Lorraine Warren.
Yeah, I'm not too fond of the Warrens, but I think they did good things to further the field, but. To get it out in the public, but other than that, I'm not too fond of them.
Probably share the same opinion, but
yeah, and obviously they're apparently I've been told they're part of like the paranormal mafia, and like their family members will come after you if you talk shit about them or something. So,
well, I hear a lot of people talk shit about them. So, I have a lot of respect for what they did because of how it helped advance the field. But looking down at individual cases, they screwed up more than they helped. Which, I mean, when you think about it, they're pioneers in the field. Being a pioneer means you're figuring it out as you go. So them to make mistakes makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't fault them for trying to make money off of it, because if you can make money off it, go for it. But towards the end, when it became more about making the money and some of their results are questionable, that's where they start to lose me.
Yeah, and the family now, with all the movies that have come out, loosely based on their research or whatever, I think that's why they're like the paranormal mafia of trying to protect that, because they're making so much money off these movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I don't like that whole, like, I understand making money, but at the same time, just not at the expense of other people.
You got to give them credit here with the Conjuring House. The parents told them that absolutely not. They don't want their stories told. And so, Ed Warren, I think he talked about it in one interview, and Lorraine Warren didn't say anything about it until they decided to make the movie. And then she started speaking up. So they went decades without ever talking about that house, and it was, one of their favorite investigations. So I got to give them credit there. They were asked not to do anything with it, and they didn't.
Yeah, and the recent movies, the first one was in conjunction, because Andrea Perron was a consultant on that movie. And if any of the listeners haven't listened to that episode, the 2 episodes I did with her, go back and listen, because she goes into great detail about the differences and the process that they went through for all that. But so we don't get into all that, because that's an hour-long conversation. That's why I talked to her for like 2.5 hours.
That was an amazing interview. That was. You listened to it, and it was great.
Thank you. She's an amazing lady, and I was very fortunate for her to invite me on her show, and had a wonderful time talking to her on her live Facebook show. And she's just a pleasure to talk to on and off, recording.
Yeah, I've enjoyed every interview that I've heard with her in it, and I hope to meet her at some point.
Yeah, hopefully on down the line I'll get to actually meet her in person. So what are some other places on your list that you want to hit?
Well, we were going to do the Velisca Axe Murder House and the Sally House, because they're only about an hour apart from each other. We were going to do that this summer, but then Get Haunted started growing quite rapidly, and we're like, all right, we'll hold off on that one, because Get Haunted needs our attention more so.
I want to do St. Augustine's White House.
Yeah, and the normal ones, Waverly Hills and want to knock those off our list.
We like to be open to like the obscure and the unknown.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, like I said, the big ticket items are great and all, but I would love to just go find that gem, that place no one really knows about, and to actually get to experience it.
If you ever go to Waverly Hills, another place to hit up there in Kentucky is Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky. That place is crazy.
That's definitely one of the ones we wanted to go to as well.
Yeah, that's on our list. And then there's another Octagon mansion in West Virginia. It's either Northern Virginia or West Virginia. That we're probably going to this summer. We've talked to the owners there already, and they told us we should come down. And I know a few people that have gone there and just had absolutely remarkable experiences there.
Yeah, Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky. That place is not. It's not like any other place I've ever investigated. They have reports of everything from UFOs to Bigfoot to just there's a portal in the basement. And if I ever did believe in portals, I believe it's in this place. It's just one of those places you walk in and it just smacks you in the face.
Now, one of the places I really like, I've been into since even before I met Bill, was all the national parks.
Yeah.
For all the stuff that goes on in those.
Oh, she's obsessed.
I am obsessed. I love it. I love those missing stories, the 411 stories. So, another thing on our list is I told them we have to start checking those off of our bucket list as well, because I want to visit all of them.
Yeah, I've had my buddy Steve Stockton on quite a few times. He's kind of I don't want to say an expert in that, but that's what he does with the missing person, the mystery page on YouTube.
Northeast Pennsylvania is special. It really is. I'm a coal miner at heart, and our whole area is mine. And if you talk to the old timer, you hear stories that are just baffling. Finding weird caverns in the woods, or Bigfoot sightings, UFO sightings.
Yep.
We have it here.
Oddly, Pennsylvania is third in the country for Bigfoot sightings.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but we're not just into the paranormal. We do UFOs and Bigfoot and all that. We love it. Any of that high strangeness kind of stuff we're into.
But it's just our investigations in our own area. We get things that are connected to the mind that probably shouldn't be, but we always are finding connections. And then just talking to locals that claim that their houses are haunted or they've seen things, they always say stuff about the mind.
Yeah. We've had in some investigations locally, spirits come through and we find out a little bit about them, and it doesn't really add up to the history of the house. And usually at that point, I'll ask the question, how did you get here? And several times we've gotten a response of, we came through the mines. So we think they use the mines kind of as a paranormal highway to move around.
Wow, that's interesting. I guess they're just looking for somebody to listen to them, so they pop up because hey, people are coming to this house to investigate, so I'm just going to pop up and say hi over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's partly that, partly, if they realize they can, use the mines to kind of travel, why the hell not? Explore a little bit. We've come across travelers a few times. One noteworthy one was actually in Gettysburg. We were staying at the Farnsworth house, and we ended up doing SS method in Jeremy's room, and we had a woman come through. And off the top of my head, I don't remember what her name was, but she introduced herself as a traveler. So the next day, we were taking a tour of the Museum of Haunted Objects that's there in Gettysburg, and one of the stories that they told us was that there was a woman who lost her, I think it was fiance, in the Battle of Gettysburg, and then she died en route coming back to Gettysburg to look for him. So she is, they see her all over town. She's constantly just kind of wandering through town looking for him. And I'm like, that sounds familiar. What was her name? And he told us the name. I'm like, holy crap, we talked to her last night.
Wow. That's awesome to get that correlation.
Yeah.
And that's something we always try to look for, is correlations and stuff. And I think that's kind of why we dabble into everything, because we feel like there's a connection.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. We just don't really know how yet. And that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I agree with that. The more that I investigate and the more I do the show here talking to different people, Yeah, I find all these weird synchronicities and connections between all of it. And like you said, we don't know what that is yet, but yeah, the more you dive into it, the more you're like, somehow it's still all connected in.
Yeah.
Yep.
I kind of envision it like a spider web. Like they're separate, yet they're still linked. And there's a center to it all. You just don't know yet. And it's kind of fun just trying to map it all out.
So, Bill, you had mentioned the Get Haunted Network, and I said in the intro that we would talk about that because I think it's an awesome thing that y'all are doing. And so, how did y'all get involved with that? And explain to the audience what the Get Haunted Network is and what y'all are wanting to do.
As I mentioned before, I once worked for Ghost Hunt USA, and I left for a variety of reasons. But one of the people that I met while working there was Rob Stakowitz, who has become our partner with Get Haunted. And he left for his own reasons. But one of the things that we both really missed after we left was to, bringing people out, teaching them about the paranormal, showing them how to do a proper ghost hunt, and having those kinds of experiences. So we started talking about doing our own thing. We wanted to be able to bring people together, host these kind of events, and do it in smaller locations with less people, and kind of really focus in on the people that come in. And that's where the idea for Get Haunted started. But it very quickly evolved into something way more. It became the Get Haunted Network. It's a paranormal community. Our goal in it is to bring together individuals, teams, location owners, psychics, YouTubers, podcasters, and anybody else that even has an interest in the paranormal. Bring them all together in a positive, welcoming community in which we can all work together to further the field. So, if you ask, well, what kind of benefits are there to the Get Haunted Network? Let's say you're an individual, you want to go to Waverly. Well, that costs quite a bit of money, and most people really can't afford it. But you can go into the Get Haunted Network, say, hey, I want to go to Waverly on this weekend. Who wants to go, who wants to chip in and be part of it, and get people to go with you. If you're looking for a team, you could come in and look for a team. If you're a team looking for members, you can post that. If you're a podcaster and you're looking for people to interview, you could come in and look in the network for people. If you have an idea for equipment, but you don't have the skill set to build it, you could come in and find myself or one of the other equipment builders in the network to help you with it. It really, the main goal is that everybody wins. We're planning on doing some, when the weather gets warmer, doing some events at some of these locations, not ghost hunts, but to help clean up cemeteries, do some work at the Shanley, clean up after the winter at White Hill. And then, yes, we're also doing, our own events, hosting ghost hunts. And unlike most of the other ghost hunting groups that are out there, we try to keep our numbers small. We're not going to be making anywhere near as much money as these other groups. We would rather have less people and have those people have a more intimate experience at these smaller locations.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. The kind of paranormal united front, the intention is good there, but it's not as well executed. And so this Get Haunted just encompasses kind of all of it instead of just, sitting around a fire singing Kumbaya, the para-unity stuff. Just to Get Haunted, it gives people resources, like you were saying, individuals who don't have the resources to go out and investigate places like Beverly Hills that are expensive or have the equipment or want to learn. It kind of gives them an outlet to do that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we're currently working on, and I actually have to do some work on this week, is we're putting together a database of all of our members and what their skills are. Are you good at graphic design, YouTube, equipment, anything? We have a huge list that we put together that you can check things off on. And this way, if somebody's looking for, let's say you're starting up a team and you want to have a really cool logo, but you're not artistically talented. Well, you can go into this database, look for someone who has a background in graphic design, and reach out to them and be like, hey, here's our team name. We want looking for a logo, and they can help you produce one. If you want to start a podcast, there's a lot that goes into podcasting.
Mhm.
So you can reach out to someone who does podcasting and kind of, have them help you along in the beginning.
I know it's definitely helped with people who currently have podcasts to find people to interview.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate enough to be on a few of those podcasts, but it was opening up that ability to find different people to interview and find different stories and stuff like that to cover.
Yeah, and then it's always interesting who you meet. One of our favorite YouTube channels is Mondo Doc. Some of his videos have given us ideas of places that we can go because he's in Pennsylvania, and I'm like, oh, well, we can go there. We can go do this there, and then we find out not only is he in Pennsylvania, but he lives really close to a friend of ours, and we actually got to meet his girlfriend over the weekend. We had a show up in Scranton, and she came up and was able to come see us, and he wasn't able to make it, but it was great to be able to get in touch with these people and talk with them, and we got some of the paracelebs starting to join in, and yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, networking is definitely a huge thing in the paranormal world that, to get with a team, like you were saying, you started your own and that's what a lot of people do because they either can't get an answer from a local team or they're not treated very nicely because they don't have any experience. And it's kind of a catch-22. Well, how can you get experience if nobody wants to give you experience?
Right.
And so, yeah, to have an outlet for that is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I know, both of us and Rob, we all, when we were first starting out, had trouble getting involved. As time has gone on, it's been easier and easier to get information, but it's also become easier and easier to get bad information.
Right.
But so really what you want to do is you want to be able to sit down and talk to some of these people who do it and learn. And a lot of people that I've encountered are like, well, no, I worked for a very long time to learn all this. I'm not going to tell you my secrets. And, well, how is the field ever going to progress if everyone has to start from scratch? The whole of human history is built upon you build off the knowledge that people who came before you figured out so you can keep moving forward. And that's kind of what we want to build, a place where everyone can kind of build off of each other and keep moving forward.
Everyone's equal. We don't believe, especially in this field, there's no such thing as expert.
No.
Right.
I don't care how long you've been doing it or whatever. Either you were doing it for the last 50 years or you just started today. There's no expert. There's no exact science to it.
Yeah.
So we're all just pioneers traveling the same path. Why aren't we helping each other? Why are we kind of being secretive and fighting amongst ourselves when we should be uniting and working together towards a greater goal?
Yeah, the scientific community is never going to take us seriously if all we are is a bunch of infighting.
Yeah, yeah. And also the education part of it, I think should be a big component as well. And I know there's articles and stuff on the Get Haunted website, but the general public, they just know what they see on TV. And so you get a lot of these Facebook groups and stuff of people posting stuff and they get ridiculed for it when somebody could just give them a simple explanation that, this is pareidolia or this is, dust or this is, lens flare. And so instead of people being nasty, just trying to help each other.
Well, one of the things that we're doing to try to help with that is, we started doing a monthly paranormal town hall meeting. First Thursday of every month, we get together, and it's a Zoom call. We have a topic for the month, and we just kind of discuss it. What are your theories on it? What are your opinions on this or that? If you need help, it's the time to ask. Our first one was in January, and that was equipment. Our next one will be this Thursday, February 3rd. And that's going to be protection. We have one of our members, Dustin Crowley, coming on. He's well versed in demonology and that kind of thing. So he's going to talk about how to protect yourself on a ghost hunt. And then coming up in March, we're going to be doing a town hall on haunted objects, of which Tanya and I have several.
Yeah, and anybody interested can go to gethaunted.com and check that all out. And also, Get Haunted does all over all the social medias as well.
Yeah, the best place to go right now is our Facebook group. Find us under Get Haunted. And then that's our public page. And then you should find a link on there to our private page, the Get Haunted Network group page. that's where all the fun stuff is. That's where all of our members are. And we made it private just so that on the off chance that we have somebody that comes in and starts causing trouble, that, we can get rid of that negativity before, it affects the rest of the group.
Right.
Thankfully, everyone that's come in has been awesome. Yeah, everyone's loving the group so far. And
it's been helpful so far to many people.
Yeah.
Awesome. It's been great talking to y'all this evening. Everybody can find you on the social medias, Empty Casket Paranormal, and also your website, emptycasketparanormal.com. And also you have, they can get to all the stuff that the equipment you make and all that stuff through your website, but you also have an Etsy page, right?
That's right. Our Etsy page is, our shop name there is Empty Casket Equipment.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Bill, so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Fun. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, head over to the Unseen Paranormal Lounge on Facebook for all the latest updates and discussions about the show. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, or at unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe to help more people discover the show. The Unseen Paranormal Podcast is proud to be the ambassador for paranormal for Verbal.com. A big thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. You can find more of his music on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify. And as always, thank you for listening.
As you pass the other side.